This isn't the story of a man who simply made it into the history books. This is the story of a man history itself was afraid of. His name was Rasputin, and this is his story. (1869), the village of Pokrovskoye, Siberia. If you try to find it on a map, you'll barely spot it. A tiny dot in the heart of the most unforgiving region on Earth. A place where winters last for months, where temperatures drop to -50, where poverty, superstition, and alcohol are the three pillars of life. In this place, a peasant woman named Anna gave birth to a boy she named Grigori. Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin. His childhood was ordinary, very ordinary, maybe even worse than most. His father was a simple farmer. Their home was poor. His future was already written. Grow up, farm the land, grow old, die, like everyone else. But there was something about this boy that was different, something in his eyes. The neighbors said that when Rasputin looked at you, you felt like he was reading your soul. Some people were frightened. Some were mesmerized. Nobody was indifferent. That same gaze would one day conquer an empire. His youth was full of trouble. Theft, drunkenness, fights. The village was fed up with him. But one event changed everything. At 18, he went to a monastery. Maybe to escape. Maybe to repent. Maybe simply because he had nowhere else to go. There he discovered monasticism, prayer, fasting, and a mysterious religious sect called the Klisti. A group who believed that in order to be saved, you first had to sin. That was exactly what Rasputin had been waiting to hear. Early 1900s. Rasputin is 30 years old. He set off on foot. He claimed God had spoken to him and told him to go. Where? St. Petersburg, the capital of Russia, the heart of the empire. The journey took years, but along the way, he built something more powerful than any weapon: a reputation. He visited villages. He healed the sick. He made prophecies. He talked, and God, how he talked. His voice was warm. His words were simple, but their effect ran deep. People who listened to him for hours said it felt like someone had spoken directly to their soul. By the time he reached St. Petersburg, his legend had arrived before him. Important clergy wanted to meet him. Nobles invited him over. And step by step, he climbed higher, until he reached a place no Siberian peasant had any right to set foot in: the Winter Palace. Nicholas II, the last Tsar of Russia. On the surface, the most powerful man in the world. Underneath, a terrified father who cried at night. The reason was Alexei, his son, heir to the throne, a child born with hemophilia. Hemophilia means the blood can't clot. A small cut could bleed for hours. A simple bump could be fatal. Alexei had crises every few months. Severe pain, internal bleeding, fever, and the Russian royal family, with all their wealth and power, could only watch. Doctors were helpless. The medicine of that era hadn't advanced far enough, and Alexei's mother, Tsarina Alexandra, was losing her mind. This is where Rasputin walked in. 1905, their first meeting. Rasputin sat beside Alexei's bed, placed his hands on the boy, said prayers, spoke gently, and Alexei's pain eased. How? Nobody is entirely sure even today. Maybe Rasputin knew that stress worsens bleeding, so he calmed the boy with his presence. Maybe he stopped the aspirin the doctors had been giving, which was actually making the bleeding worse. Maybe there was something we still don't understand. But it didn't matter how. What mattered was that it worked. From that moment, Tsarina Alexandra gave her soul to Rasputin, permanently. Smart people know that real power is never on the throne. It's behind it. Rasputin knew this. He began slowly expanding his influence, like a plant growing roots, quietly, patiently, without making a sound. Alexandra consulted him every day. The letters exchanged between the two were filled with lines that showed Rasputin had become not just a healer, but Alexandra's spiritual guide. Then came the next step: politics. Dismiss this minister. That general is a good man. This law must be passed. And Alexandra listened and told the Tsar. And the Tsar, the weakest Tsar in Russian history, usually agreed. Foreign ambassadors reported that Rasputin was effectively ruling Russia. It wasn't an exaggeration. Enemies multiplied. Clergy despised him. Nobles mocked him. Newspapers printed bizarre stories about him: drunkenness, moral corruption, witchcraft. But none of it made a difference, because behind him stood Alexandra, and behind Alexandra stood Nicholas, and Nicholas was the Tsar. "1914, World War I began. Russia entered the war, and the defeats came, one after another. Millions of soldiers died. The economy collapsed. People starved. And what did the Tsar do? He went to the front. He personally took command of the army, which meant every single defeat now had his name on it. So who was controlling the capital? Alexandra. And behind Alexandra? Rasputin. Read Alexandra's letters to the Tsar, and you'll find the name "Our Friend" appearing every few pages, a reference to Rasputin. Our friend says to replace this minister. Our friend says not to worry, God will help. The nobility was on the verge of explosion. An ignorant peasant was deciding the fate of an empire. Someone had to do something. The night of December 16, 1916, St. Petersburg. A group of Russian nobles, led by Prince Felix Yusupov, devised a plan. They invited Rasputin over, told him Yusupov's wife wanted to see him. Rasputin came. Without fear. Maybe he knew. Maybe he simply didn't care. The table was loaded with cakes and wine, all laced with potassium cyanide, enough to kill a man within minutes. Rasputin ate. He had the cakes. He drank the wine. He sat back. He talked. He played guitar. He stayed alive. Yusupov was losing his mind. According to the plan, Rasputin should have been dead by now. Yusupov went upstairs, got a gun, came back down, fired point blank into his chest. Rasputin collapsed. Everyone thought it was over. They went upstairs to celebrate. A few minutes later, Yusupov came back to check the body, and Rasputin opened his eyes, stretched out his hands, grabbed Yusupov by the throat, and started to rise. Yusupov screamed and ran. The others came running. Rasputin had made it out of the palace. He was fleeing across the snowy courtyard. They chased him. More shots. He fell. They still weren't sure. They tied his body with rope and threw him beneath the frozen surface of the Neva River. 3 days later, they found his body, blue from the cold. But the autopsy report said something that still leaves people speechless to this day. His lungs were full of water, meaning when they threw him under the ice, he was still breathing.
Before his death, Rasputin had written a letter. As if he knew, he wrote, "If I am killed by common men, the Tsar and his throne will be safe. But if the nobles kill me, Russia will be devoured. Brother will kill brother."
3 months after his death, the Bolshevik Revolution began. The Tsar fell from power, and 1 year later, Nicholas, Alexandra, Alexei, and all their children were executed. Rasputin had been right.
Who was Rasputin, really?
A genius con artist who only wanted power? A genuinely spiritual man destroyed by a corrupt system? An instinctive psychologist who, without any formal education, could read people with frightening precision? Maybe all of the above. Maybe none of it. But one thing is certain. Rasputin, without a single day of ruling, without a single day of formal education, without a single day of inherited wealth, rose from nothing and changed the course of empires. And perhaps that is the most terrifying thing about him. Not any magic he possessed, not the death that kept refusing to come, but the fact that the most powerful people in the world are the most vulnerable when they're afraid. And Rasputin knew that.